Hello, welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors. On today's show, I'm joined once again by our pal Vivek Jacob, who is just spending so much time talking to me the last couple of weeks. But we love it because Vivek is great, and it's the preseason, and I want nobody else on the show to talk preseason than Big V. Of course, on today's show, we are going to continue our thread of episodes we've been doing for the last few weeks, looking at what success might look like for each of the key members of the Raptors. And we have come now to OG Anunoby, maybe the most interesting Raptor going into this season, full stop. We're going to talk about what a successful season might look like for Anunoby as he looks to make the leap. And we're also going to talk about a comment yesterday from Nick Nurse about job and camp battles, and maybe it ties into Malachi Flynn. Maybe it doesn't. He, of course, didn't play a whole lot in the first game of the preseason, and maybe there's a little battle going on for the backup point guard spot. Either way, we're going to talk about that and OG Anunoby on today's episode, so stick around and enjoy.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1030 of Locked On Raptors for Wednesday, October the 6th. I'm your host, Sean Woodley of RaptorsHQ.com. You can find me on Twitter, as always, at WoodleySean. You can find the show at Locked On Raptors. And also, you can subscribe to the podcast, follow the podcast on all your favorite podcast apps. We are free on all platforms, and we're on YouTube as well. So please go hit that sub button. I think we're one sub away at the time of recording from 800, which is wonderful. Thank you to everybody who has latched onto the show here. New listeners, existing listeners, taking the show in through a new medium. Either way, all are welcome, and we love you all very, very much. And thank you for making Locked On Raptors your first listen of the day. All right, on today's show, we are talking about OG Anunoby, continuing a thread of episodes digging into what success might look like for key members of the Raptors this season. We're also going to talk quickly about some comments from Nick Nurse yesterday regarding some camp battles. Maybe they are about Malachi Flynn. I'm not quite sure. We'll talk it through with today's guest, who is back and just stuck in his room recovering from his Achilles injury and thus forced to talk to me all the time. It is Vivek Jacob from Raptors.com. How's it going, buddy?
It's good. Happy to talk with you again and get this series back on about what a successful season would look like for OG. But yeah, I know we got some news to take on before that.
Yeah, so let's get into that yesterday. So Nick Nurse, I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but basically to the effect he was talking about camp battles and made reference to the idea that some guys who came into camp maybe sort of projected thinking they had a job locked up, whether it was a role or whatever it might be, maybe just a roster spot. Again, it wasn't entirely clear. Mentioned that some of these guys who came in kind of thinking they knew their role are maybe being challenged by guys who you might not expect. And I thought that was really interesting because, of course, we're a day removed at the time of this quote from watching Malachi Flynn not play in the entire first half of yesterday's game, play just 13 minutes to Delano Banton's, I think, 24-25, and just didn't really seem like he was part of the plans in the same way as all the other 6'9" weirdos the Raptors rolled out there in that game on Monday. It's just one preseason game. They have 6 preseason games, and I think, it's totally reasonable to expect that Malachi Flynn might start one of these games in place of a Fred VanVleet, for example, who is in no need of preseason warming up. Maybe he gets a little bit of extra run off the bench, runs the second unit. Who's to say? But I thought that was interesting. Do you think there is a potential trouble here for Malachi Flynn keeping that backup point guard job that we all kind of assumed he was going to have coming into camp based on those comments from Nick Nurse, Vivek?
I don't. Not yet, anyway. I think that's Nick Nurse playing a bit of mind games with his own crew. He's used to doing it with the media, but I think this might be a case where everyone's kind of looking across the locker room, but it's actually no one in particular. And just saying, hey, let's keep everyone on their toes. And the reason I don't think it's Malachi Flynn is because when asked about why Malachi didn't play the first half after the game, he did explain that he wanted to get Scotty reps on the ball. He did want to get Delano reps on the ball and see what that looked like. And so it wasn't something that was about Malachi not doing what he's supposed to. The one thing he did sort of criticize about Malachi at practice yesterday was that he would just like Malachi to push the ball up quicker. And so maybe that was something where he gets to sit on the bench and see what Scotty and Delano and even Utah are doing as soon as they get the board, because he was explaining how with and again, this is where it goes back to now thinking that Malachi is safe, is he views Fred and Goran and Malachi as like the good catch and shoot guys.
Sure.
And so he wants them to push it, get the ball out of their hands, let all those other guys go to work, and then when the kickouts come to them, that's when they'll have their shots. So I think Malachi is going to be an important part if he can get his jump shot going. And I think maybe he's got to step away a little bit from thinking that, he's got to be the point guard and really run the offense every time.
Yeah, I think that's well put. And like I said, it's one preseason game with a lot of dudes to get into the lineup. Like, I think we'll probably see, for example, Sam Decker and Ish Wainwright get some extra run at some point here. Reggie Perry, guys who didn't really get into that first preseason game. There will be plenty of opportunities with the 6 preseason game schedule, which I think is very much by design for the Raptors to try to just get as much time to sort of marinate in this roster as they possibly can. I think we'll see sort of a more even dispersal of minutes by the time we get to the end of the preseason for a lot of those sort of second unit guys and guys beyond that. Again, I think if Banton is going to challenge anybody, it's challenging for those backup minutes at the 4 almost to start the season. If, we assume Scotty Barnes is going to slide into the starting 5 with Boucher and Siakam not available right out of the gate, there's going to be some minutes behind him there to soak up. Obviously, some of those will be soaked up by probably Precious Achiuwa sliding up a position, OG sliding down a little bit, but Banton, I think, is probably more in the mix as like a point forward type than he is as a backup point guard. And, I don't think I see the Raptors just like giving up on Malachi Flynn or anything like that. One preseason game does not tell the whole story, so I would not worry too much there if you are a Malachi Flynn stan. If you are Eric Flynn, his Facebook-loving father, who had a rough day on Monday with Facebook going down for all the hours that happened, I think it's probably all right there for Malachi Flynn. Before we get to OG stuff, any other sort of practice notes for you, Vivek, that have kind of stood out? It's been pretty, what you'd expect from the first couple of weeks of training camp here, but anything else in terms of what Nick Nurse has said, in terms of what players have said that has you sort of thinking or ruminating at all about what this season could look like out of the gate for the Raptors?
Yeah, I mean, there was the standard stuff about Delano and Utah, but maybe just what Nick said about Justin Champagnie. And the fact that, there is going to be a tough conversation to be had on what he brings to this team. And again, it is something different. It is, his ability to get into gaps and spaces. And when he was talking about Utah, he was like, oh man, when he cuts hard. And he wishes that, some of the other guys could pick up on that. One of the guys who doesn't need to pick up on that is Justin Champagnie. And so if that's something he really values, then, maybe that is a spot that Champagnie can vie for and put himself in the running over the course of these next few games.
Yeah, I mean, same applies as Banton with that backup 4 spot kind of being up for grabs. And Champagnie, kind of the quietly very good player from the Raptors preseason game. I watched the first half back last night just because I was sitting around and I wanted to see what the broadcast looked like and everything. And Champagnie just looks like he knows what he's doing. It's kind of a standard basic thing to say, but for a rookie, it's always notable when they kind of know where to stand and know exactly what their role is right away. And it seems like Champagnie's pretty aware of that. And I honestly don't know what the hell he is as a player. Like, he's got some ball handling chops, obviously was on the ball more in college than he figures to be in the NBA, but there's something there with Champagnie, and he obviously fits the vision 6'9" of it all as well. So we'll keep an eye on Champagnie. He got banged up, I think, yesterday. So we'll see if he's able to play in the next preseason game tomorrow night against the Sixers. But, I would either way, as a two-way guy, he's going to get some 905 time for sure. It's the matter of, where he, sneaks into the NBA rotation. And if he can, there's a lot of good players on this team. It might just be that the early part of the season offers opportunity that won't be there as the season goes along, but we shall see. We're going to continue on here and get into OG Anunoby and what success might look like for OG in his now 5th season in the NBA. onto that new contract and ready to potentially take a leap. We saw him have a really great preseason opener with 21 points on 7 of 12. We're going to talk about what success might look like for OG this season in 1 second. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Sweatblock, who are changing the game when it comes to excessive sweating. Look, it's not comfortable to talk about. I don't love talking about it, but I don't like to sweat a lot, but I do sweat a lot. And it's just, Sweatblock has come along and totally changed the game for me. Usually I'm worried about what colors I'm wearing. Is it going to hide sweat properly? It's like a very, very ongoing nightmare all the time. But with Sweatblock's antiperspirant wipes and their dry shirt guarantee, you don't have to worry about that anymore. Sweatblock is stronger and more effective than most clinical antiperspirants. You simply apply it at night before you go to bed, wake up the next morning, wash, and go about your day without worrying about sweat. Guaranteed. I know this is going to sound too good to be true, but I am a Sweatblock user. I use it all the time, and it is working for me extremely, extremely well. And I can't recommend it enough. You should definitely go and pick yourself up a box of wipes. You got the deodorant as well, some other products you can pick up at their site. If you or somebody you love is dealing with this, you have to go check out Sweatblock today. Get it for 20% off at sweatblock.com with the promo code LOCKEDON, or at Amazon and CVS, although that promo code does not apply at those locations. So go to sweatblock.com. Today's show is also brought to you by Sleeper, who have changed the game when it comes to fantasy basketball. I am a person who cannot stand the day-to-day grind of setting my lineup for fantasy basketball. I get suckered into a league every year, and then within 2 weeks, everyone in said league is mad they invited me because I forget to set my lineup, and I ruin the integrity of the league. Well, guess what? With Game Pick by Sleeper, you don't have to worry about that daily busy work anymore. You can set your lineup at the start of the week and let it ride because you pick just one game per week for each starter to count towards their team's total score, ensuring an even number of games played between opponents, which is always the big thing to keep in mind with fantasy basketball. This replaces counting numbers of games with actual strategy. You get to pick your games based on player matchups, home versus away, opponent's defensive ranking, pace of play, and more. All that adds up to more strategy and less daily busy work. Whether you prefer a redraft, keeper, or dynasty, Game Picks has you covered. Sleeper has cracked the fantasy basketball code. If you play fantasy football and like that weekly sort of rhythm of things like I do, if you prefer building out a weekly strategy versus daily busy work, you're going to love Game Picks. Download the Sleeper app and start a league with your friends today. You will not be disappointed. All right, Big V back here again. Thanks everyone for making us your first listen of the day. And we continue on here, digging into now OG Anunoby. We've talked about OG a lot on the show in recent weeks. If I go back to like the recent episodes, OG appears in about half of the episode titles, but I think that's apt. He is, I think, the most important player for the Raptors this season, the most intriguing, the guy who kind of changes the ceiling of the team the most if things go really, really well for him. There's a lot tied up into watching OG this season. And so we should probably think about what a successful season for him is going to look like if he's able to achieve that. So I guess let's just begin statistically speaking. Last season, of course, 16 points a game, 5.5 rebounds, 2.2 assists, shot 40% from three, 78% from the line as well, which was a nice uptick after some years kind of being a weirdly bad free throw shooter, had a 60.5 true shooting percentage as well, career high on the most attempts he's ever taken in games, averaging, 12.1 attempts a game, 4 more than his previous career high. And he increased the efficiency, which is what you love to see. Now is going to come the big challenge of increasing the efficiency from being a high usage role player to being a high usage just player on the team. And that's going to come with obviously statistical uptick, but the numbers for efficiency are going to have to keep pace if it's going to be, I think, a successful season, quote unquote, for OG. We'll get to the efficiency side of things, the playmaking side of things in a second here. But just in terms of numbers, what are you kind of hoping to see from OG this season, Vivek? Like, are you looking for him to take that leap up into like low mid 20s scoring? Is it more about the sort of way in which he's getting his buckets than it is the volume of the buckets? Where are you at with the stat line you're hoping to see from OG across the board this year?
I think with the scoring, for sure, I'm looking to see him crack that 20-point barrier. Because I think it's right there for him. I think when you take away Kyle Lowry and the opportunities that will come with that, that in itself should see him get up into that 20 mark. I think it was only one preseason game and it was only one, pregame warm-up that I saw from him. But I think the improvement in the shot, or what he's trying to do with his shot, with, putting more arc on it and just having that higher release, I think that is something that is going to help him. uh, and just being able to shoot off the dribble. That is a huge asset to have, being comfortable pulling up. And you think about his development over time, you think about 2 seasons ago, looking still a little clunky on the dribble and all of that. That's steadily gone away. And he's looking more and more assertive, more and more confident with his dribble, his handle. So I think the 20-point barrier for sure, I'm looking at him breaking. And then on the glass, it's going to be a team effort for the Raptors. So I think he needs to almost take on a leadership role from that standpoint and say, yeah, I am going to get on the glass. Some of it you're going to have to evaluate game to game where, is the best player on the team, on the opposing team, a guard. And so is OG assuming that matchup, at the top of the key all the time. It's unreasonable to expect him to be the one grabbing the board in those situations. So outside of that, if he can go, I think it was about 5.5 last season, but there's no reason at his size, at his strength, that he should be under 7. So
that's
a good
point.
Like to see him get to.
Yeah, that's a good point with the rebounding. I mean, everyone's going to have to be pulling their weight there because they're constantly going to be outgunned size-wise. And I thought they did a good job against the Sixers. Obviously, no Embiid to throw into the mix there, so all of the grains of salt with that. It's Andre Drummond's a good rebounder. Sure. Is he like an effective boxer outer at this point in the preseason? Probably not. So, it's only so much you can take from that. But yeah, you're right in the rebounding. I also think, the playmaking is going to be fascinating as well. I'm not expecting what we saw from Pascal last season necessarily from OG, where it was a little bit more advanced. It was after a season of being the number one option and kind of learning what defenses are trying to do to him, where he kind of expanded that playmaking repertoire last season. So I think we're probably a year or two away from that with OG, but can he do what Pascal did in his first season as sort of the guy for the Raptors in 2019-20? Can he average 3.5 assists a game? Have some games where he might be the target of opposing defenses, especially early in the season without Siakam. Can he have some of those surprising 7-8 assist games where he's leveraging his own sort of gravity into good looks for others? That's going to be interesting as well. There were some positive signs kind of up against the doubles that the Sixers sent his way a lot of the time in that first game, but it's only one game. And again, the Sixers were not their complete selves, and it's the preseason. So, we should just there should be a little graphic that we can put up in the top corner of the YouTube. That's just like a large piece of salt, just kind of hanging over everything we talk about during the preseason. But that's going to be interesting, the playmaking side of things. As far as the scoring, I mean, I'm just thinking a final stat line for OG. I'm fascinated by this because we're a couple weeks away from doing our over-under podcast, and I'm still reckoning with what the over-under I'm going to set for OG is going to be as far as points a game. But, it's a big leap. He was at 16, but can he get to 22 a game? There's a lot of vacated scoring from Kyle not being around. Obviously, no Pascal early in the season, no Boucher early in the season. I don't know if it's going to be the most efficient, but if he can get to that 22, 23, then you have that sort of two-headed monster between him and Siakam once he's back, and it becomes really difficult to guard them. And I think there's an argument to be made that OG's efficiency stands a better chance of scaling up more effectively than Pascal's, just because he is a better shooter, just because, he does have a sort of knack for the rim, when he wants to, and he can kind of bully guys around the way Pascal can't really. It's a little bit more work for Pascal to get those easy looks off around the bucket. And again, I think Pascal's the best player on the team, but I think there's a chance that OG is a slightly lower scorer than Siakam, who is a little bit more efficient, and you're totally okay with that. You're still fine having Pascal be your number one option because he brings the playmaking, but I think you could see OG, I think it's a reasonable thing to expect, 21, 22 a game without too much of a drop-off efficiency-wise. And I think it's fair to expect that. It's fair to want that because it does really tie into what the future of the team is going to look like. If OG can take that leap, then things get really interesting pretty quickly for the team. And so I don't know, where are you at with the sort of not wanting to put undue expectation on OG, right? It's kind of a difficult sweet spot to find, because you don't want to be if he's at 18 a game and he's efficient, that's fine, because they're going to need more than that. But is it too much to expect 23 a game with a 58.5 true shooting or something like that? where's that sort of even sort of middle ground as to what's fair and reasonable to expect from OG, who we've just kind of all assigned this breakout, and it still has to happen. And maybe it's unfair that we're heaping all this on him.
Yeah, I think that's where, to me, I just say let's get over 20. Yeah. And then let's just see what the rest of the offense looks like. Because even in that first preseason game, it did look like a meritocracy. And so it seemed like everyone was getting their touches, and we'll see how it spreads around. But with OG, I think over 20 for sure. I'm not going to be mad if it's under 23, under 24. I'm not going to be mad if the efficiency dips a bit from last season, just because he's going to have to go about getting his baskets in different ways. Last year was pretty much everything's either coming at the basket or it's a spot up 3-point shot. And so now you're asking him to do more things off the dribble. There might be a few more, we talked about the assists possibly going up. There might be a few more turnovers in the mix as well. So those things won't frustrate me. That's part of the development curve for him. But for me, the biggest theme of the season for the team and for the individual players involved is the training wheels are off. So go out there, pick up a few scrapes and fall if you need to a few times. But, at this point, we're not looking to sugarcoat things. We're not looking to, really keep everyone safe. Go out there and be exactly the player you think you can be. And if you fall short, you fall short. But at the same time, it's his 5th season. So, and it's his first go at being like a real star.
Yeah, it's there's even more to dive into here. I want to kind of get to some specific stat categories. That was a lot of S's to get out of one mouth. But I want to get to some specific stats and kind of dig into, what we're hoping to see there and what would be a disappointment. If he were to come in and, finish with X number well below expectation, does that end up being an unsuccessful season, or is there kind of no lack of success to be had as long as he's getting opportunity? That's an interesting thing we'll dive into in 1 second here. But first, I want to tell you about betonline.ag. Maybe you want to bet for OG Anunoby to win most improved player. That's the thing you can do at betonline.ag. You should go and check it out. Check out all those Raptors and NBA preseason props. You can also, of course, bet on football. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. With a new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, BetOnline continues to be the number one source for everything football. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit when you use the promo code LOCKEDON. That means if you put $100 in, you get $150 to play with off the bat. That is a great, great deal from basketball, football, boxing, baseball, whatever it might be, down to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, Vivek, let's continue on here. Let's talk about some specific numbers for OG and what you're hoping for as sort of a barometer for success. Let's go to that true shooting first off. 60.5 last season was not a real drop-off at all after the trade deadline when he soaked up a lot more possessions with no Norman Powell around. And he seemed pretty comfortable in that role. Obviously, like we've said, with the increase in usage, which is going to be like 23, 24, 25% usage guy potentially, there's going to be some trade-offs there efficiency-wise, unless he's just like this, matchup-proof superstar, which is not fair to expect. But, there are some guys who scale up and lose no efficiency, and that is the sign of someone that you really want to build around. So we'll see. The jury's still out there. But if you're looking and expecting a bit of a drop-off, what is the drop-off you're comfortable with, and what is the drop-off true shooting wise where you start to go, oh, this is not great. This doesn't bode well for that sort of breakout, that star that we're hoping to see OG become?
So I'll break it down into the different segments. So for example, the 3-point shot, he was at 6 attempts a game last season and shot pretty much 40%. This season, if he's shooting more off the dribble, maybe he gets the attempts up to 7 or 8. But if the number comes, to about 36, 37, I'm fine with that, right? If it drops to 34, 33, that's where it's like, okay, the off the dribble stuff really needs some work. And the other thing I look at is how does he sort of make up for that from a true shooting perspective? It'll be getting to the line, right? Can you get to the line more? He improved significantly at the free throw line last season, shooting 78%. So can he be right around there? Can he get above that 80 mark? And so if he attempted, just, what was it, two and a half free throws last season? Let's see if we can double that, right? Let's see if we can get it up to 4 and maintain that 80%. I think that'd be healthy for him. And I think if he can keep his true shooting above, 56, 57, I think that's great, right? Let's keep it above that range. So those are the two areas with the 3-point shot, with the free throw shooting. I feel fairly confident that the majority of his 2-point shots will still come around the basket, because most of that stuff is still, him either getting good looks created for him, or him, getting switched on to a big and breaking them down and then going to that spin finish. So I feel pretty good about his 2-point shooting, especially around the basket.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, the around the basket, I mean, he's just such a monster, right? Like, he's going to be difficult to stop. Last season, less than 10 feet, he shot 60.6% from inside 10 feet last year, which is not a bad place to be. Looking at his pull-up numbers from last year, and this is going to be the swing skill, right? And like you're talking about, if there are issues with him being a higher usage on-ball guy and not being able to connect on those pull-ups, that's going to dig into the efficiency more than anything else. So last season, 2-point pull-ups, 13 of 38, 34.2%. Not a great percentage, only 7.3% of his total shots. And then from 3, 6 of 30 on pull-up threes last season, just 5.8 of his total looks last year, 20% from pull-ups. He was 42.4% on catch and shoot, which I think is very clearly not a problem for OG. Can he pull that pull-up 3-point percentage up to 30? Like, just to show that there's a threat of that shot. I'm not saying he's got to be Steph Curry out of the gate here, but can he make that a shot that teams are going to be thinking about at least a little bit? Because if it is, then things become easier for him as a pick and roll operator. He's having guys try to fight over screens as opposed to easily going under and being happy with it, giving him the Giannis treatment and all that. That's going to be a huge, huge swing skill. I have no idea how to expect, what's going to happen there. He seems eager to take those pull-ups. We saw a little bit in the game against the Sixers. Kind of watching back, I was kind of taken aback by how eager he was to, pull up from 20 feet. Maybe not the greatest shot selection in a couple of those instances, but I'm glad he's doing it. And, he can get the shot off. He's got the step back that he's kind of working on as well. I think there are sort of avenues by which he can create space there to get those looks off. So that's a huge one. You mentioned the free throws as well. I would actually even want to see him go higher than 4 a game. Like, if he's not above 5, I think that's kind of a missed opportunity for easy points. Like, there's no reason he shouldn't be able to pick up 3 shooting fouls at the rim a game. Just the way, if you're kind of doing the math, like, he is going to be at the rim a lot. He is constantly he's a hawk for the rim, right? In transition, he's kind of always under there as well. I feel like, he's got it within him to average 6 a game. Obviously, you need some help from the officials and the respect of the officials and all that stuff to help grease the wheels from that side of things. But I think 6 is kind of what I'm hoping for here. It's a lot to ask for, but it's going to be a thing he has to do to keep that efficiency high and maintain that level, and also help give the Raptors extra easy points, which they're going to desperately need, because that half-court offense, as we saw in that Sixers game, not exactly the greatest thing in the world as of right now. When it comes to the true shooting, if we just kind of compare to Pascal, in his season where he broke out, won most improved player, and won the championship, he had a 62.8 true shooting. That was obviously playing off of Kyle Lowry, Marc Gasol, Kawhi Leonard. There was a really nice ecosystem in which Pascal could score easy buckets in that season. It's obviously going to be a little bit more. It was a OG didn't even play for that team. Can we just take a second to remember how ridiculous that roster was? Like, it never ceases to amaze. Unreal. But But yeah, Siakam in the second season of his sort of breakout, when he became the number one option with Kawhi gone, went down to a 55.4 true shooting. He was at 54.7 last season as well, although it upticked near the end of the year. I don't want to see a 7% drop off for OG from 60 to 53. That wouldn't be ideal. But if he's going to sort of replicate that, then and replicate the sort of increase in usage, then maybe that's what you have to kind of bake in, an expectation to drop down that low. I think he's got a little bit more touch and 3-point shooting acumen that'll make it so it doesn't fall off that hard. But, I think if it's below 53, 54, then I'm a little bit concerned about, okay, does he actually have the juice to sort of be that number one option down the line, or a number two option, whatever it is you're hoping him to be? That's where I'll get concerned. If it's 55, 56, but there are positive signs, the playmaking upticks a little bit, I think you can qualify that as success for OG when it comes to scaling up and not losing too much efficiency. So that's kind of where I'm at there. When it comes to the defensive side of things, Vivek, this is going to be a conversation all year, I think, in terms of, and you mentioned it earlier, in terms of him. Does he get that main assignment on a point guard who's, kind of the ball dominant guy for a team? Is he, doing the thing where he guards centers sometimes and goes all over the place and is the Swiss Army knife? Or does some of that defensive responsibility get delegated elsewhere? Is there a barometer for success you're looking at for OG on the defensive end this season? Or is it kind of a matter of just like, don't drop off too much and continue to be OG and you're going to be fine?
Yeah, it's the latter. Don't drop off too much. And I think that what would lend most to him being able to maintain that level on the defensive end is the fact that, you look at someone like Pascal, and this argument I would use with the true shooting percentage as well, is he won't be as much of a primary ball handling option.
Good point. Yeah.
And so I think that responsibility will be less. And so I think that lends toward OG maybe having a bit more energy than Pascal would have had. I think with OG, we know what he can do as a one-on-one defender. Mm-hmm. Maybe here and there he's had some slip-ups as a team defender, and maybe that's something he levels up in. But either way, I fully expect this to be the season where he makes an all-defensive team. And I think he's a special defensive player. He's proven that to everyone that watches regularly in Toronto. And it's just a matter of everyone else catching on. The same way, Miami fans seem to be catching on to what Kyle Lowry can do.
That's going to be a fun subplot all season long. Oh, Kyle Lowry is good and makes players better? What the hell? This is news. All right. Way to show your ass. You did not watch a single Raptors game for the last 8 years. Congratulations, Miami Heat fans.
Just nutty.
Yeah. Just
like, did they not watch that game 7 where he dropped 35 and dumped them out of the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, there's a long and storied history of Kyle Lowry cooking various members of the Miami Heat, so that is a fun one. There are a few good ones out there. I know there's a few folks out there who are appreciative of the Kyle Lowry effect before it even happens. So thanks, Nikias. Yeah, to kind of close off the thing here with OG, I think. Also, I'm going to make a rule is you're not allowed to have any takes on OGs, like the breakout, the viability of the breakout until after Pascal's back. Because it could be pretty rough in the first month of the season. It really, really could. There could be just extra attention being thrown his way that he's not used to. And the supporting cast is not there to really supplement and offer the help that he's going to need to kind of ease into that role. It's really going to be trial by fire for him. And I think everyone should take a beat. If he's got like a 52 true shooting and is, kind of struggling and turning it over as much as he is getting assists, like wait until Pascal's back to see if that actually is real and what he is. And I have a hunch that things will get much easier for him when the 6'9" power forward who scores 23 a game and defends like a monster and play makes real good is back in the lineup. So that's a rule that I've instituted here. If you're a Raptors fan, you must follow it. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. Big V, feels like a good place to wrap things up. Any last thoughts here on OG before we go? And if not, just plug away, man.
I'm looking forward to, OG having a ton of, breakout game after breakout game after breakout game. and having to do pressers and having to do way more pressers, just having nothing to say.
Yeah, I'm also looking
reminding us that he doesn't shoot to miss.
I would hope that he brings that back. I also hope that we see at some point here, like OG plays so well that the whole, they could trade him for Ben Simmons thing, it just goes to bed forever. Look, I'm not here to say who's better between OG Anunoby and Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is probably the better player right this second, in terms of all-encompassing impact on a game. I don't think that's going to last very long because I think OG does a lot more for a modern NBA team than Ben Simmons ever has or ever will do. And I think it's going to be not very long until people realize, oh, yeah, that's why the Raptors wouldn't do that trade. It shouldn't be a surprise that they wouldn't do that at this point. But, that's the way Ben Simmons is talked about, I suppose. Big V, that's it for today. Anything you want to promote?
Usual stuff. You can check out my work at Raptors.com, Complex Canada, CBC Sports, and you can follow me on Twitter at Vivek M. Jacob.
Fantastic. The handle is right there on the YouTube page. Speaking of the YouTube page, words. Please subscribe to the YouTube page, please, and continue to add to those numbers. We're pushing towards 1,000, hoping to do that maybe by the time the season starts. That would be wonderful and great and very kind of all of you kind folks out there to help make that happen. You can subscribe, follow this podcast on all your favorite podcast apps as well, free on all platforms. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Your second listen of the day should, of course, be Locked on NBA, as they're covering the league every single day. Fresh slate of preseason games every single night, and there's been great work over there. And all as well. Next week on Locked on NBA, there will be a previews. My God, words. This is difficult. I have had one coffee, not two. These are usually my, level I need to be at to function coherently. But there's going to be the ultimate NBA preview coming out in the next couple weeks here. Roundtables with myself and a bunch of hosts. I'll be on the Teams on the Rise roundtable, which is a fun place to be with teams like the Pelicans and the Grizzlies. So we'll chat about how Scotty Barnes is the equal of Zion Williamson and John Morant. Perhaps they're superior. We'll see. I'll make that argument, I bet, on those roundtables. So you have those to look forward to as well. We will talk to you again tomorrow. Katie Heindel's going to pop on the show. We're going to talk about whatever we want. I don't know what we're going to talk about just yet, but that'll be fun. And then on Friday, Ben Carlos from the new Yahoo Sports NBA roster of coverage folks and content people is going to come on the show to talk about the Sixers game on Thursday night. Next week, going to have some great stuff too. Hoping to work on a really big guest that would be really fun and I think awesome, a treat for Raptors fans. So that's in the works. I'm not going to tease it just yet, but hopefully that's in line for next week. And our pal Javon Shepard's going to hop on the show next week too to talk about how he's a TV superstar and all that stuff. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you again Thursday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Bye-bye.